Hi, welcome to Third Eye Nutrition. I am Shannon Gilmore, and today we are going to somewhat continue our conversation from last week because we had talked about the different types of salts out there, like Himalayan versus sea salt versus table salt. And the one thing about Himalayan and sea salt is that they don't have iodine in them. And so I thought today we'd talk a little bit about iodine and how important it is for thyroid health. I did get a quick question about if there was any sort of downsides to Himalayan sea salt. And the only thing I'll say, other than it doesn't have iodine added to it, is that it has a fairly high carbon footprint. So if you're an environmentalist at all, or you care about the environment, it does have I mean, it's coming all the way from Pakistan, it's being mined, and this is a non-renewable resource and it's coming all the way from Pakistan. So that has to be taken into account. As well as I have heard, if you are concerned about working conditions and fair trade and things like that, I have heard that some of the conditions in Pakistan are a bit deplorable. So whether that's true or not, I haven't seen it with my own eyes, but there's some rumors that maybe the working conditions aren't as good. So that would be something to consider when doing Himalayan salt. I for that reason, just choose a lower carbon footprint salt from Utah. So it's really up to you. But like I mentioned, none of these salts have iodine in it. And you cannot make a thyroid hormone without iodine in your body. So this is something to be very aware of because we are seeing a epidemic of hypothyroidism. And you have to wonder if some of that is because the government is recommending lower salt intake. There's no iodine in a lot of these new salts that people are using. So you just have to wonder if that might be contributing to the problem. But you're supposed to get about 150 micrograms a day of iodine. And so that's not that hard to get if you're eating a pretty well-rounded diet. But let's just talk a little bit about the sources where you can get iodine. So for instance, obviously we started with iodized salt. So any type of table salt like a Morton's, you're going to get the iodine there. Although as you listen to the last episode, I don't actually recommend an iodized table salt because of all the different things added to it that really aren't that good for your body. But then the other two sources is obviously like a supplement or food. And I always recommend food over supplements. So let's start with that one. So the lowest sort of one of the lower sources, but still a good source, is going to be like eggs. And then from there, we can go to like a dairy product. So things like cottage cheese is probably going to have the highest amount of iodine, yogurt, milk, or these are all pretty decent sources of iodine. However, the caveat of that is that you can have great variation of iodine in it based on what they do to the cow. So if there's iodine in the feed, if there's iodide rubbed on the udders when they're milking them for disinfectant purposes. So a lot of it really depends on what they're actually doing to the cows. So we really don't have a good idea of what the iodine content of dairy is. The third and last and highest source of iodine is going to be from anything from the sea, basically. So your highest sources are going to be things like cod, and tuna, shrimp. But I actually particularly like the highest source, which is seaweed. Okay, so seaweed is really, really high in iodine, and the different variations that you see the highest is kombu, wakame, and nori. So I oftentimes, for a patient, especially if you're vegan and you don't eat shrimp, you don't eat any kind of seafood or fish, you don't eat eggs, you don't eat dairy, that would be probably someone that would maybe want to go to the seaweed route. And so oftentimes you can buy like a bottle of dulse flakes or doshi or dashi, which is going to have a decent amount of iodine in it and should cover your needs just with a couple sprinkles of it. You do want to check the manufacturer to make sure it's a good source because, as you know, if it's from the sea, that means it's going to have mercury in it or heavy metals or something. So you want to make sure that it's from a good source and that it is and then they actually have iodine in it, okay? So that would be sort of like some of the food choices. Now you can do the supplement route. However, with the supplement, you really have to be careful because the irony of using iodine supplements or just iodine in general is that if you don't have enough of it, you can cause hypothyroidism. If you have too much of it, you can cause hypothyroidism. So you really have to be careful when you are supplementing with iodine. It comes typically in liquid drops, and so that can actually, that can, you can make a mistake and quickly just shove it all in your mouth, and then you get like 2,000 micrograms in your mouth, and you're like, oops. So I would say work with a clinician, either a functional nutritionist or a functional doctor, if you are going, if you do have thyroid issues and you want to try to test out to see if the issue is the lack of iodine, because you can have your levels tested first of all, but secondly, you can also play around with it a little bit and be monitored by someone, because if you are noticing any type of hypothyroidism developing, I would say back off on it big time. I have heard different doctors recommend as high as 1,000 micrograms, and I know for myself, I just tested it out to see, and I actually saw some symptoms of hypothyroidism when I went that high. So I would be very, very careful and conservative and work with someone that can help you monitor this closely, okay? And if you have any type of autoimmune related thyroid issue like Hashimoto's, you aren't going near it without close monitoring from a doctor, okay? So please do not do this at home, because you can cause some imbalances. So I would just say stick to food always. Stick to your eggs and your dairy and your seafood and your seaweed. Seaweed's probably one of the more, if it's a clean seaweed, it'll be the more benign source. So that way can kind of help your thyroid out a little bit to make sure that it's not just a lack of iodine that's causing the hypothyroidism, okay? So hopefully that was helpful, and I will see you next Friday. Have a wonderful weekend. And you can come visit me at thirdeyenutrition.com. And I don't know what my subject is going to be for next week, so please write to me and ask questions, because I will always make that the subject matter for the following week, okay? So cheers and have a great weekend. Bye.